Hi friends, my name is Dr. Jesse Wolf, pronouns he, him, and his, and I'm a psychologist over here at the CSU's Mental Health Services located on the third floor of the CSU Health Network. Today we're going to be talking about Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, or DBT, and the ways in which these concepts and set of skills can help you more effectively navigate some emotional vulnerabilities. I think this is particularly helpful for folks like yourself, college students, new or returning, as college life can bring with it new and interesting obstacles as they relate to new relationships, new ways of relating to your environment, and new emotional vulnerabilities that are brought up in ways that we couldn't have foreseen. So these set of skills can help us navigate those obstacles in ways that are more effective and more aligned with our own personal values. So we're going to start off by talking about the core principles of dialectical behavioral therapy created by Dr. Marsha Linehan. The first one is mindfulness. And mindfulness is all about bringing your attention and your awareness into the present moment, both within your environment and internally within yourself. Next, we're going to be talking about distress tolerance, which is a set of skills and concepts that help us get through a difficult situation, ultimately without making it any worse for ourselves. Third, we're going to be talking about emotion regulation, which is a set of skills that help us navigate our emotional vulnerabilities and the ups and downs that come with having big emotions. And then lastly, we'll be discussing interpersonal effectiveness, which is a way of communicating with other people in a way that feels true to ourselves, that honors our own self-respect, while also maintains that relationship depending on your goals. So we're going to kick it off by talking about mindfulness, which is a concept or set of skills that helps bring our attention into the present moment, both the environment around us as well as internally. This can be particularly helpful for folks who are dealing with significant academic distress or interpersonal issues with friends or a roommate, or just the normal difficulties transitioning to life as an independent person. Being more mindful of our environment and being more mindful or aware of our emotions can help us more accurately identify what some of the problems might be so that we can more effectively then overcome them. The way that I like to do this, is called the 5 senses mindfulness activity, or 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'd love y'all to practice with it with me now. And feel free to pause your video throughout this practice if that feels better for you. So like all of our mindfulness activities, we're typically going to start with a nice deep breath, inhaling through your nose and exhaling back out your mouth. And then we're going to start by listing internally or on a piece of paper, whatever feels right to you, 5 things that you see in your environment. I'll give you a moment to do that. And then 4 things you can hear. And it's okay when your thoughts naturally drift away from this activity. Just simply notice that, then bring your attention back to the exercise. Once you've listed 4 things that you hear, you can list 3 things that you can touch, 2 things you can smell, and then finally 1 thing you can taste. This is a way for us to fully engage with the present moment, to ground yourself in the here and now. And like I said before, it's natural, it's normal for your thoughts to drift away throughout that activity. Just simply notice that and bring your attention back. The more that you practice mindfulness, it's like a muscle, the stronger that will become. So now moving on to distress tolerance. So this is a particular set of skills that helps us to get through a very difficult situation without making the situation worse for ourselves. So these skills don't necessarily address the issue at hand or the problem that sent you into a crisis, but again, it just simply helps you get through that moment without acting in a way that's going to set you back or that's misaligned with your values. And so one way of doing this is potentially radical acceptance, but that's not always appropriate given the situation. One that can be particularly helpful for folks is just by simply taking a deep breath, walking away from the situation, and not engaging in those impulses or urges that you otherwise are having in that moment. So next we'll talk about emotional regulation. And within emotional regulation is a set of skills that helps us to more effectively cope with our emotional experience and emotional vulnerability. college life can bring with it new and interesting relationships to food, to our peers, to sleep, to substance use. None of these things are inherently bad by any means, and yet they can still lead to an increase in our emotional vulnerability, how intensely we experience those emotions. And knowing where we are in terms of our emotional vulnerability, whether or not we're on thin ice or relatively sturdy ground, can lead us to make decisions that are more effectively aligned with our long-term values. So a way folks can typically benefit from this is just simply being mindful of these emotional vulnerability factors, which include sleeping, eating, and exercise, just to name a few. So what I would suggest is take out a piece of paper or on your phone and just simply day to day jot down the rhythms of these daily routines and self-care activities, and notice how they're interfering and interacting with your emotional experience as a result. So to be more specific around emotional regulation skills, such as tracking our emotional vulnerabilities in daily routines, a way that you can accomplish this is through what's called daily diary card, journaling, and there are plenty of apps available as well that can help you kind of track your day. What I recommend is every night, sit down and reflect on the day that you just had, marking down how'd you sleep the night before, to how you felt when you woke up, did you exercise in a way that felt good for you, how many meals you ate that day, did you take your medication as prescribed, did you use alcohol or drugs in a way that's different or similar to the way that you usually do them. And what we're going to notice over periods of time is the ways in which these activities interact with our emotions. So you'll look back on a particular week and you might start to notice trends like on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I was feeling more irritable than I typically am. And maybe there's things we can do about that. Maybe some of these factors are non-modifiable, meaning we can't change them. But I would rather have that information than not have that information so that I can proceed just simply more mindfully and more effectively. So finally, we're going to be talking about interpersonal effectiveness, which is a set of skills that teaches us how to more effectively engage with our relationships, make our relationships more satisfying to us. And that can be particularly crucial to college students who might be coming into new relationships or saying goodbye or changing old relationships. An important place to start here is just figuring out what is important to you when you're in a dialogue with another person. Typically, this shows up for folks when we're saying no to another person's request, or maybe we're asking something of somebody else, whether that's having our roommate do the dishes because it's their turn, or saying no to going to a party that is just simply misaligned with our values. So a good place to start there is just figuring out what it is we're trying to achieve within this interaction. One priority might be just simply getting your goals met, right? You just simply don't want to go to that party and you don't want to go. Or you want your roommate to do the dishes and you just have to have them do the dishes. A second priority might be maintaining the relationship itself, right? Which can be really, really valuable. So it's not just that you want your needs met, but you also want to do so in a way that keeps the friendship alive, or at the very least civil. And then lastly, a priority that we would want to consider is our own self-respect. And do we feel good about how we handled that situation at night when we lay our head down on the pillow? So figuring out what those priorities are, and oftentimes it's a combination of all three, and that's okay. Just simply being mindful of those priorities can drastically change the way, the intensity that we approach those conversations, and do so in a way that's just simply more effective for ourselves and more aligned with our own personal values. So if you yourself are somebody that struggle with some of the things that we've talked about today, whether that's emotional vulnerabilities or difficult dealing with impulses or urges, or difficulty struggling to prioritize your own needs within these relationships, DBT, again, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, can be particularly helpful for somebody like yourself. And I would invite you to practice some of the skills that we talked about today. First and foremost, I would start off with mindfulness or grounding. We talked about that 5 senses mindfulness activity, but there are infinite ways to ground yourself and bring your attention back into the present moment. I would challenge you to do that daily, whether it's for 30 seconds or 5 minutes. If you're somebody who's struggling with some of the things that we talked about before on a more regular basis, I would encourage you to come in to the 3rd floor of the CSU Health Network and talk to one of our on-call clinicians about setting yourself up with the appropriate resources. Thank you so much for your time today, and good luck practicing these skills. Y'all got this.